Seattle always felt damp in November, as if the city itself carried a quiet sadness. Daniel Hayes stood in the doorway of the garage, watching the rain soak the concrete. The sign above him, Hayes and Company Auto Repair, hung crooked, one corner broken off after a storm last winter. He never had the money or time to fix it. Now, it didn't matter anymore. The business was closing today. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered against the empty bays. Tools were boxed up, invoices shredded, and a decade of sweat and scraped knuckles reduced to a pile of memories on the floor. Daniel wiped his hands on a rag, though there was nothing left to clean. He heard footsteps behind him. "Is it done?" Amelia's voice was soft but tense, as if she wanted the conversation to end before it began. Daniel turned. His wife, at least for now, wore a beige trench coat perfectly suited to downtown offices rather than a dusty garage. She held her phone in her hand, thumb tapping over the screen as she avoided meeting his eyes. "Yeah," Daniel said. "Everything's closed up." She nodded, but there was no sympathy in her expression, only impatience, something distant, something he feared for months. "We'll figure it out," Daniel tried. "I can apply at the dealership, or maybe Daniel." She finally looked at him, and the look alone told him what was coming. "We can't keep living like this." He swallowed. "Like what?" "Barely paying rent, living off your overtime, carrying the weight of a future that doesn't exist." He had heard the rehearsed tone before when she was preparing to end something. "You know I'm trying," he said. This shop meant, "That's the problem. All you ever talk about is how things used to be. Meanwhile, everyone else is moving forward." Everyone else. Meaning Lucas. The friend she claimed she barely spoke to, then spoke too often, then didn't bother hiding anymore. Daniel looked at the puddles gathering around the door. Rainwater always found the weakest spot. "So this is about money," he said quietly. "It's about stability. It's about him." She didn't deny it. The silence between them thickened. Amelia tightened her coat, a small gesture that somehow widened the distance between them. "We're not working anymore, Daniel. You know that," she said. "We want different things." He had always feared she wanted more than he could give, but he never imagined she would reach for someone else. Someone with a penthouse view, not a garage roof full of leaks. "When did you stop loving me?" Daniel asked. She blinked, startled by the bluntness. "It wasn't one moment. It was everything. The struggling, the waiting, the feeling that I married someone who wasn't going anywhere." Her words sank deep, slow and heavy. "Amelia, I'm filing for divorce," she said, cutting him off. "It's the right thing. For both of us." He stood still, as if the world had shifted beneath him. The rain outside grew louder. Amelia stepped forward to leave, but paused. "You're a good man, Daniel, but good isn't enough." She walked away before he could respond, her footsteps swallowed by rain. That night, Daniel sat alone in their apartment. The kitchen smelled like old coffee. The clock ticked above the sink. He stared at the divorce papers on the table, his name printed neatly beside hers. Marriage reduced to ink and signatures. His phone vibrated. A message flashed. "Amelia, I'm staying at Lucas's tonight. Please don't call." The screen blurred as his eyes stung. Not from anger. Anger required energy he didn't have. Only a quiet ache remained, spreading through him like slow frost. He walked to the bedroom they once shared. Her side of the closet was empty. Shelves cleared. Drawers open. Her perfume gone, leaving only the faint scent of detergent and dust. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. He didn't know how long he stayed like that. Only that the apartment felt too quiet, too clean, too final. When dawn came, weak light spilled through the blinds. Daniel picked up a cardboard box and began packing his clothes. If she wanted a future without him, he would give her that. Not because he agreed, because there was nothing left to hold on to. As he sealed the box, his hand trembled, not with fear, but with exhaustion, with loss, with the weight of a life coming undone. He whispered into the empty room, "I loved you," even when it wasn't enough. Outside, the city woke to another rainy day. Inside, Daniel Hayes prepared to start over, though he had no idea how. Portland did not feel like home at first. The city was louder, brighter, more impatient, a place where everyone seemed to be rushing towards something invisible. Daniel Hayes arrived with 2 suitcases, a resume stained with the failure of a small auto shop, and a heart still raw from the quiet violence of Amelia's departure. He rented a studio apartment off Burnside Street. The building was old, the kind where every hallway light hummed and every neighbor kept their door half open to air out the smell of cooking. The landlord didn't ask many questions. Daniel appreciated that. Questions required answers he wasn't ready to articulate. The new garage, a bigger, corporate-run repair center, accepted him quickly. His interview lasted 10 minutes. "You know engines?" the manager asked. Daniel nodded. "You show up on time?" Another nod. "Then you're hired." The first weeks were mechanical in every sense. He woke before sunrise, rode the bus along the foggy riverfront, punched in, repaired cars, wiped down his tools, ate lunch alone, then rode home as lights turned on across the city. Routine dulled the ache, but it didn't erase the moments that clung to him. There were nights when he still reached for the other side of the bed, mornings when he almost texted Amelia out of habit, afternoons when he thought he saw her blonde hair in passing crowds, only to realize it belonged to someone else. One late evening, while closing up, he overheard 2 mechanics arguing about a new role opening in a partner company, an electric vehicle manufacturer, with a training program for technicians willing to learn software diagnostics and advanced systems. "You should apply," the senior mechanic Rudy told him. "You've got the hands, the patience. Could be good for you." Daniel shook his head. "I need steady work, not training programs I might not qualify for." "You do, Rudy said, "but stability isn't always staying where you are." The words bothered Daniel, not because they were harsh, but because they echoed too closely the thing Amelia once demanded of him: move forward. She said it with disappointment. Rudy said it with belief. That night, Daniel opened his laptop in the dim light of his apartment. The application form glowed coldly. He hesitated at every field experience, goals, skills, as if the act of writing them exposed how far he had fallen. But his fingers kept going, even when his heartbeat quickened, even when he thought of Amelia choosing Lucas because he wasn't enough. He submitted the application before he could change his mind. Weeks passed. Winter crept into the city like smoke, and Daniel learned how to keep his mind occupied. He read manuals, took overtime shifts, and kept his apartment clean even though no one visited. He cut his own hair with clumsy precision. He cooked simple meals, everything small, quiet, and manageable. Then, in late January, an email arrived. "We are pleased to invite you to the Technical Advancement Program assessment." The rest of the message blurred as a tremor passed through him. There was no triumph, only a cautious awareness that his life might be shifting again. He reread the email twice, looking for mistakes. None. The assessment took place in a sleek glass building overlooking the Willamette River. Daniel wore the only dress shirt he owned. In a room full of younger applicants, he felt out of place, older, rougher, a man rebuilt from old parts. Yet when the evaluation began, his anxiety faded. Engines, electric or not, still made sense to him. Systems still followed rules. Machines did not betray. When the final exam ended, the evaluators whispered among themselves. One nodded toward Daniel. He pretended not to notice. 2 days later, he was accepted. Training was grueling long hours, dense manuals, computer simulations that forced him to abandon old instincts and adopt new logic. But routine slowly gave way to purpose. He found himself staying late not because he was lonely, but because he wanted to master each system. His instructors took note. "You don't talk much," one told him, "but you absorb everything." Daniel had no response to that. Talking had cost him too much in the past. Learning felt safer. Months stacked into a year. His posture changed. His shoulders no longer slumped. He bought a better set of work clothes. He upgraded from bus rides to a used sedan. He fixed himself. His apartment remained modest, but it was cleaner, brighter. He was becoming someone new, without meaning to. But there were reminders of his old life, like the email he received one spring afternoon. The subject line read nothing more than his name. Inside was a message from Amelia. "Daniel, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to share something. Lucas and I are getting married this summer. I thought it would be right to let you know." Attached was a photo. Amelia, in a designer dress, her smile polished, Lucas's hand resting on her waist like he owned her future. Daniel stared at the image for a long time. The ache did not return with the same force as before. Instead, it arrived quietly, like a bruise he forgot he had. He did not respond. Time continued, as it always did. By his second year in the program, he was promoted into a senior technical position, steady pay, benefits, confidence he had never known before. He learned to breathe again, to sleep without replaying old conversations, to exist without feeling he had failed someone. Then, exactly 3 years after he left Seattle, a plain envelope appeared in his mailbox. He opened it casually until he saw the embossed gold lettering. Wedding invitation, Amelia Turner and Lucas Graham. His name printed in the corner as an invited guest. Underneath, a handwritten note in Amelia's familiar script. "I want you to come. I think it's important you see the life I chose. I hope you'll understand someday." Daniel froze. Not because of anger, because inside those words was a wound she didn't realize she was reopening. That night, Portland felt colder than usual. Daniel sat at his kitchen table with the invitation spread out before him. He traced the edge of the card with his thumb. The room was silent, except for the distant hum of city traffic. He could throw it away, ignore it, pretend the past had no power. But he wasn't sure that was true. He wasn't sure anything about his past with Amelia was finished at all. He leaned back, eyes closed, breathing slow and deliberate. The question pressed against him like a weight. Was he ready to face her again? The night stretched on without an answer. Daniel woke before dawn, the pale Portland light barely touching the edges of his blinds. Sleep had avoided him all night. The wedding invitation lay on the nightstand, unopened again, but unmistakably present, like an echo he couldn't silence. He sat up slowly, rubbing the fatigue from his eyes. The apartment felt unfamiliar this morning, too still, too expectant, as if the walls themselves sensed a shift approaching. He brewed coffee, though he barely tasted it. His mind returned again and again to the same thought. Why did she want him there? The note Amelia had written was short, almost careless in tone, yet loaded with intent. She wanted him to witness her new life, her upgraded life, the life she believed he could never give her. Daniel walked to the window. Outside, commuters rushed along the sidewalks, the city moving with its usual indifference. He envied them the simplicity of going somewhere without carrying a past that weighed down every step. He picked up the invitation again, turning it in his hands. The gold embossing reflected the light, gaudy and ostentatious, exactly the world Amelia had always gravitated toward. He wondered if she was happy, truly happy, or if the shine simply blinded her long enough to ignore the cracks beneath it. That afternoon, While working at the EV facility, his distraction didn't go unnoticed. As he reviewed diagnostic reports, his supervisor, Lena, approached. "You all right?" she asked, adjusting her headset. She had sharp eyes that rarely missed anything. "Just tired," Daniel replied. "Tired doesn't make you reread the same numbers 4 times. He hesitated, then exhaled. "My ex-wife is getting married. She sent me an invitation." Lena leaned against the work table. "Do you want to go?" "I don't know." She studied him. Closure can be a dangerous word. Sometimes people use it as an excuse to reopen wounds. The truth of that landed uncomfortably. Daniel closed the tablet. "She wants me to see the life she chose." "And how do you feel about the life you chose, Lena asked. Nobody had asked him that before, not even himself. He thought of the years since the divorce, the endless hours of training, the promotions, the isolation, the slow rebuilding of self-worth. He thought of the steady paycheck, the respect, the quiet satisfaction of mastering something new. The life he built was not glamorous, but it was his. "I feel steady," he said. "Then don't let someone from your past make you forget that," she answered, pushing away from the table. But late that night, as he stood in his kitchen with the city lights stretching outside his window, he realized Lena was only partially right. This wasn't about forgetting what he'd built. It was about facing what he'd survived. He pressed his palms against the counter, breathing deep. His reflection in the window looked older, sharper, more grounded than the man Amelia left behind. A man who had learned to carry himself differently. He wasn't desperate for revenge. He wasn't curious about her happiness. He wasn't longing for reconciliation. He wanted something simpler, to sever the last thread tying him to the past. He picked up the invitation again, running his thumb across the embossed date. The wedding was in 3 weeks. He held the card, weighing the decision one final time, then nodded to himself firmly, quietly, without ceremony. He would go, not to show her who he had become, not to see who she had chosen, but to end the ghost of a life that no longer belonged to him. The days leading up to the trip felt strangely ordinary. Work continued. Portland spring rains came and went. Daniel maintained his routines, but beneath the surface, something tightened in him, a tension he couldn't name. He tried to ignore it, focusing instead on preparing for the journey. He booked a hotel near the wedding venue, a coastal resort north of Seattle. He rented a car instead of driving his aging sedan. He even bought a suit, a simple charcoal one, tailored subtly to fit the broader shoulders he had earned through years of manual work and discipline. The tailor commented, "Big event coming up?" Daniel paused. Something like that. But the moment the suit was ready, he felt an unexpected shift. He saw himself in the mirror, clean lines, calm expression, a presence he had grown into without realizing it. He no longer looked like a man asking the world to forgive his failures. He looked like someone who had rebuilt from ash. The night before he left, he received a text from an unknown number. "Daniel, it's Amelia. Just checking if you got the invitation." He stared at the message for a long moment before typing. "I got it." 3 dots appeared, then vanished, returned, vanished again. Finally, "I'm glad. It would mean a lot to me if you came." He read the words twice. They felt wrong, too polite, too controlled, the opposite of the woman who once told him he wasn't enough. He typed nothing in response and set the phone face down. The morning he left Portland, the sky was clear, rare for the season. The highway stretched ahead in long gray lines. Daniel drove with both windows cracked, letting the wind rush through the car. Mile by mile, the city disappeared behind him. As he crossed into Washington, memories resurfaced, fragments of his life with Amelia. Mornings they shared coffee, evenings when she curled against him on the couch, laughs they had during the early years. But then came the harder memories. The distance, the silence, the accusations unspoken but felt, the betrayal. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel but let the memories come. He didn't fight them the way he used to. They were part of him, but no longer controlled him. By late afternoon, the coastline appeared. Waves crashed against rock. The resort loomed ahead, glass walls, manicured lawns, wealth styled into architecture. Daniel parked and exited the car. Cool ocean air brushed against his face, grounding him. Tomorrow was the wedding. Tonight, he stood at the edge of a life he once thought would break him. But it hadn't. He inhaled the ocean breeze slowly, deeply, as if drawing strength from it. For the first time in a long time, he felt ready. The morning of the wedding arrived with a soft, pale light drifting in from the coastline. Daniel stood by the hotel window, watching the waves break against the rocks below. The sky was a muted gray, the kind that hinted at rain but held back just enough to maintain an uneasy calm. It felt strangely appropriate. A day suspended between storms. He dressed slowly, not out of hesitation, but intention. The charcoal suit fit, him well fitted at the shoulders, clean through the lines, understated yet undeniably sharp. He adjusted the cuffs, smoothed the lapels, and studied his reflection. He looked composed, quietly confident, a man shaped more by endurance than ambition. He took a steady breath. This wasn't for Amelia, not to impress, not to provoke. This was for himself proof that he could stand in the place that once destroyed him and remain whole. Downstairs, the hotel lobby buzzed with guests preparing for the event. Laughter overlapped conversations. Champagne glasses clinked. Designer shoes clicked against the polished floor. Daniel moved through the crowd unnoticed, which he preferred. Yet a few glances lingered on him, not in recognition, but in curiosity. He carried himself like someone with a purpose. Outside, shuttles waited to take guests to the cliffside ceremony pavilion. Daniel boarded the last one. The ride was short, winding along the coast until the glass and oak structure emerged open to the ocean, draped in white florals, elegant in a way that made its wealth obvious. When he stepped off the shuttle, conversations momentarily softened. Several guests glanced his way. They didn't know him, but they sensed something in the way he walked, something calm, deliberate, unhurried. Daniel ignored them and approached the check-in table. The coordinator flipped through the list, her bright smile faltering when she found his name. "Oh," she murmured, "you're Daniel Hayes." He nodded. Her expression shifted curiosity, mixed with the faint discomfort of someone aware of backstage gossip. She quickly recovered and offered a polite gesture toward the aisle. "Please, take a seat anywhere on the groom's side." The groom's side. He almost laughed at the irony, but kept his expression neutral. He walked into the pavilion. Sunlight filtered through the glass panels, illuminating rows of white chairs and guests adorned in their finest. The ocean roared softly behind it all, as if nature itself were observing. But none of that mattered when he saw her. Amelia stood near the altar, adjusting her veil with the help of a bridesmaid. She looked stunning, elegant, poised, exactly as he remembered she always wanted to appear in photographs. She wore a fitted ivory gown, pearls around her neck, hair in soft waves. Beauty had never been her struggle. But her smile faltered the moment she spotted him. From across the pavilion, their eyes locked. She froze. The bridesmaid beside her whispered something, but Amelia didn't respond. Her gaze remained fixed on Daniel, widening, questioning, almost disbelieving. Daniel held her gaze calmly. No anger, no longing. Only a steady acknowledgement of what once was and what never would be again. Amelia took a small step toward him before catching herself. She blinked quickly, as if embarrassed by her own reaction, and turned away, though her shoulders tensed, betraying her. Guests nearby noticed. "Who's that?" someone whispered. "Must be a friend of hers." "No, look at her face." Daniel ignored the murmurs and took a seat halfway down the aisle. He sat with his back straight, hands folded in his lap, eyes fixed on the horizon beyond the altar. Moments later, Lucas arrived. The groom walked with practiced confidence, dressed in a tailored navy suit, his hair slicked back with precision, his smile wide, polished, almost rehearsed. A man accustomed to admiration, but not accustomed to uncertainty. Lucas's steps faltered when he noticed Daniel. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed with an unspoken question. "Why are you here?" Daniel offered no acknowledgement. He didn't owe Lucas anything, not a greeting, not a smile, not even resentment. Lucas leaned toward one of his groomsmen, whispering sharply. The groomsman shrugged, unable to help. Lucas's attention returned to Daniel, suspicion lingering like a shadow. Then the ceremony began. Music swelled. Guests rose. Daniel stood with them. The doors opened, and Amelia walked down the aisle. She held a bouquet of white roses, her steps graceful, her posture perfect. But her eyes every few seconds flicked toward Daniel, a crack in her composure, a tremor beneath the surface. Lucas noticed, too. His polite smile strained, the muscle in his jaw tightening with each glance Amelia stole. When she reached the altar, Lucas took her hand. His grip was too firm. She winced slightly, but forced a smile. The officiant began speaking, but Daniel barely registered the words. His attention remained on the micro-expressions, the stiffness in Lucas's shoulders, the flickers of doubt in Amelia's gaze, the quiet tension that rippled through the front row. It was subtle, but the cracks were there. When the vows began, Amelia's voice wavered. Not much, but enough. Lucas's vow sounded confident, even charming. He spoke of ambition, partnership, success, words that felt rehearsed for an audience. Then Amelia began hers. She glanced once more toward Daniel, just 1 second, just long enough. Her throat tightened, her breath hitched. For a moment, emotion raw and unguarded flickered in her eyes. Lucas saw it. His smile vanished. The guests noticed the shift, quiet whispers spreading like wind through wheat. Daniel remained silent, unmoving. He wasn't here to disrupt. He wasn't here to reclaim anything. He was simply the truth made visible, a truth Amelia hadn't expected to confront. When the officiant pronounced the couple husband and wife, applause erupted, but beneath the celebration lay an undercurrent, thin, sharp, undeniable. Something in the air had changed, something fundamental, and Daniel felt it. Not as triumph, not as vindication, but as the first real crack in a facade built on ambition, illusion, and denial. The ceremony ended. Guests poured into the reception hall. Daniel stayed seated a moment longer, breathing steadily, grounded. Then he rose. Today had only begun. The reception hall shimmered with gold lighting and crystal chandeliers, the kind of extravagance Amelia had always dreamed of. Servers moved like choreography, carrying trays of champagne and delicate hors d'oeuvres. A string quartet played near the entrance, their music drifting above the low hum of conversation. Daniel entered quietly. He took in the scene with an unhurried gaze. Perfectly arranged floral centerpieces, tables draped in ivory linen, guests dressed in curated opulence. Everything in the room was designed to look effortless, though Daniel knew effort real. Invisible effort had nothing to do with it. Wealth did. He moved to a quiet corner near the tall windows overlooking the coast. The ocean crashed rhythmically outside, its sound muted through the glass, but steady, grounding. A few guests drifted past him, offering polite nods. Some lingered, whispering once they thought he was out of earshot. "That's him, right? The ex-husband? He looks nothing like she described." Daniel ignored the whispers. Their curiosity wasn't his concern. Across the room, Amelia and Lucas greeted guests with rehearsed smiles. Amelia looked radiant but unsettled, her composure cracking whenever she caught sight of Daniel. Lucas, on the other hand, watched Daniel from behind his champagne glass with growing tension, like a man who had expected a ghost to stay buried. Eventually, one of the bridesmaids approached Daniel, a woman with dark curls and perceptive eyes. "You must be Daniel," she said. No judgment in her voice, just quiet observation. He nodded. "And you are?" "Marcy. I've known Amelia since college." She studied him for a moment, then added, "She wasn't expecting you to show up." "I wasn't sure I would," he replied. "Then why come?" Daniel considered the question. The answer wasn't simple. "To close something that's been open too long." Marcy nodded thoughtfully. "Well, your presence is definitely being felt." Before he could respond, a commotion stirred near the bar. Low voices sharpened. Two men in suits huddled close, talking urgently. Daniel didn't pay much attention until one of them said Lucas's name, not quietly. "His company took another hit last quarter. They're barely staying afloat." "That's not what he told investors." "Of course not." Daniel froze, listening without intending to. The words settled like small pieces of a puzzle he didn't want to assemble. He didn't know Lucas deeply, but he knew enough. Men obsessed with image rarely built anything stable below it. A moment later, Lucas's voice rose from somewhere behind the bar partition. "What do you mean they pulled out? Today? Are you joking?" Daniel's eyes sharpened. A few nearby guests glanced nervously toward the bar, pretending they weren't listening while listening intently. The veneer of flawless celebration began to ripple. Amelia, noticing the shift in the room's energy, approached Lucas with a concerned look. "Lucas, what's going on?" "Nothing," he snapped too quickly, too defensively. "Handle the guests. I'll be right back." She touched his arm gently. "Are you sure?" "I said I'll handle it, Amelia." The tone made her flinch. Daniel watched from across the room, not with enjoyment, not with malice, just quiet understanding. He recognized that tone. He had once spoken it himself, in moments of fear disguised as frustration, when the world felt like it was slipping too fast. Amelia stood there a moment after Lucas left, trying to compose herself. Then her eyes lifted and landed on Daniel. For a heartbeat, she looked exposed. Not in the glamorous dress, not in the spotlight, but in the way her breath caught. Her posture softened. Her mask faltered. She walked toward him slowly. When she reached him, she hesitated. "You came." "I did." "I didn't think you would." "You invited me." She swallowed. "I didn't expect you to look, well." Daniel didn't reply. She tried again. "Thank you for being here. It means something." "It wasn't for you," Daniel said gently, without cruelty. The words struck her harder than he intended. Her eyes lowered. Before she could respond, a groomsman approached hurriedly. "Amelia, you need to come upstairs. It's Lucas. Something's wrong." Her expression tightened. Fear flickered. "What happened?" "He's upset about something financial. He's yelling at the coordinator." Amelia's breath stilled for a moment before she whispered, "Not today. Please, not today." Daniel didn't follow her. He simply watched as she hurried toward the stairs, dress flowing behind her like a collapsing curtain. Around him, whispers spread. "What was that about?" "Something with his company. I heard he's in trouble." "Did Amelia know?" Daniel moved away from the cluster of murmurs and stepped toward the balcony doors. He needed air. Outside, the wind carried the scent of salt and pine. The ocean below churned, wild and indifferent. Daniel leaned against the railing, breathing deeply. He hadn't expected to feel anything for Amelia today. Not longing, not anger, but seeing the tension in her face, the fear behind her practiced smile, unsettled him more than he'd anticipated. He didn't want her to suffer, but he also couldn't save her anymore. Someone stepped beside him. A man in his 60s with silver hair and a thoughtful expression. "You're Daniel, yes?" he asked. Daniel nodded. The man extended his hand. "I'm Richard Graham, Lucas's uncle." Daniel shook it. Firm, measured. "I remember Amelia mentioning you," Richard said. "Not kindly, I'm afraid." Daniel gave a quiet exhale. "I'm not surprised." Richard studied him. "You carry yourself like a man who's learned a lot since then." Silence stretched comfortably. Then Richard sighed. "Lucas hides too much. Looks like it's finally catching up today." Daniel said nothing. "He's built his life on appearances," Richard continued, "but appearances are fragile. Reality always wins." Daniel's eyes stayed on the horizon. "I know." A long pause. Then Richard added quietly, "Whatever happens tonight, it isn't your responsibility." Daniel nodded once, not in agreement, but in understanding. Behind them, the wedding reception buzzed with escalating tension. The storm had not broken yet, but the air was thick with its approach. Daniel straightened his posture. The cracks beneath the luxury were widening, and the night was far from over. A low tremor of unease rippled through the reception hall, subtle at first, then unmistakable. The music faded when the quartet paused between sets, leaving conversations exposed, sharp, nervous, fragmented. Daniel re-entered from the balcony just as voices began to rise near the staircase. A bridesmaid hurried past him, whispering harshly to another, "They're arguing again loudly. The coordinator's crying." Someone else added, "Lucas punched a door." Daniel kept walking, posture steady, though the tension in the air felt almost tangible. The celebration, perfect, curated, extravagant, was unraveling thread by thread. Near the base of the stairs, the wedding planner stood wringing her hands, face pale. "This isn't supposed to be happening," she murmured to no one in particular. Daniel moved past her, not toward the stairs, but toward the center of the hall. He didn't need to follow Amelia and Lucas. Whatever was breaking upstairs would find its way down soon enough. He reached for a glass of water at the bar just as a pair of guests rushed down the steps. He lost another investor. On the wedding day? One of Lucas's partners called during the reception. Their funding is gone. But he told everyone the expansion was secure. He lied. Daniel set the glass down. The puzzle forming in his mind sharpened. And then Amelia appeared. She descended the stairs slowly, clutching the railing with one hand as if steadying herself against the weight of everything collapsing around her. Her veil brushed the steps. Her bouquet trembled in her grasp. Her face was pale, not with embarrassment, but fear. She reached the bottom and looked around the room, dazed, her eyes searching for something solid, or someone. Her gaze found Daniel. She froze, breath catching. She looked like a woman standing on the edge of her own life, watching it tilt beneath her feet. Before she could move toward him, Lucas crashed down the stairs behind her. He wasn't stumbling, he was storming. His expression was twisted with rage, eyes bloodshot, breath uneven. A man whose perfectly crafted world was slipping through his fists faster than he could tighten them. "Where is he?" Lucas barked. Guests recoiled. His Uncle Richard stepped forward. "Lucas, this isn't the time. Don't tell me what time it is." Lucas snapped, shoving past him. Amelia flinched. "Lucas, stop," she whispered. "Please." He ignored her. His eyes scanned the room and landed on Daniel. For a heartbeat, silence swallowed the hall. Daniel didn't move. Lucas strode toward him, suit jacket unbuttoned, tie loose, the sheen of sweat along his brow betraying panic beneath anger. "So," Lucas said, voice sharp as broken glass, "you're enjoying the show?" Daniel kept his tone even. "I didn't come here for a show." "Then why come at all?" Lucas stepped closer, the smell of alcohol faint on his breath. "She's my wife now." Amelia reached him, placing a trembling hand on his arm. "Lucas, please, this isn't—" He jerked away from her touch. The room inhaled collectively. Lucas glared at Daniel. "What did you expect to prove? That you've changed? That you're better now? You think Amelia cares about any of that?" Daniel's voice remained calm. "This isn't about you." "The hell it isn't," Lucas snapped. "You walk in here looking like that, acting like you're above all this." Richard intervened, grabbing Lucas's shoulder. "Enough!" Lucas shoved him off. Hard. The crowd gasped. In the brief silence that followed, the truth seeped through, unavoidable, suffocating. Lucas wasn't just angry. He was unraveling. "Everything I built, everything you think it was easy?" Lucas's voice cracked, rising. "You think money falls from the sky? You have no idea what it takes to get here." Amelia's voice was small. "Lucas, we can talk upstairs?" "No," Lucas shouted. "I'm done pretending for these people." He turned toward the guests, arms outstretched in a bitter, theatrical gesture. "You all came here for the spectacle, didn't you? The perfect wedding, the perfect power couple. Let me give you the truth." He pointed toward his chest with manic intensity. "My business is failing. Half my investors are gone. You want honesty? There you have it." Shock rippled through the crowd. Amelia staggered backward, as if physically struck. "Lucas, you told me everything was stable." He didn't look at her. "I told you what you wanted to hear." Her breath broke quiet, fragile. Daniel felt it a familiar kind of shattering. He had lived it once. Lucas turned back to Daniel, eyes burning. "And you? You think she regrets leaving you? You think she wants some noble, hard-working mechanic instead of this—" He gestured around the room. "Glamour, wealth, status." Daniel's expression did not change. "I didn't come here for her." Lucas's laugh cracked mid-breath. "Of course you did." He stepped closer, too close. "You always were pathetic," Lucas spat, "and now you're pretending you've grown into someone worth respecting." Daniel's jaw tightened, not from anger, but from restraint. "Lucas," he said quietly, "you need to stop." For a moment, just a fraction of a second, Lucas hesitated. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition. Fear. The sense that he was losing control. But pride poisoned the pause. He raised his voice, planning another strike. And then Amelia stepped between them. Her voice was trembling but firm. "Lucas, stop. You're hurting yourself." He stared at her. A muscle twitched along his jaw. "Hurting myself? Or embarrassing you?" Her eyes filled with tears. She couldn't blink away. "This isn't who you are." "No," Lucas said coldly. "This is exactly who I am. You just like the version I sold you." The room fell silent. Amelia's mascara had begun to smudge. Her bouquet slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a muted thud. Daniel could see her knees weaken, but she didn't fall. Instead, she whispered, barely audible, "What have we done?" Lucas didn't respond. He simply turned and left the hall, pushing through the double doors with violent force. The echo reverberated like the end of something far older than the marriage. Guests remained frozen, unsure whether to follow, comfort, or simply pretend it hadn't happened. Amelia stood still, staring at the doors, lips trembling. Then slowly she turned her head toward Daniel. Her expression was raw, unguarded, broken. Not longing, not nostalgia, just truth. Truth she had spent years avoiding. She took a step toward him. But before a single word could leave her mouth, someone announced quietly, "The groom has left the venue." The wedding was over. Not with a kiss, not with applause, but with collapse. And in the center of the unraveling, Amelia faced the consequences of every choice she had made. The reception hall emptied slowly, like a ship taking on water. Guests slipped out in clusters, some murmuring condolences, others pretending not to have witnessed the collapse of a wedding that was supposed to be flawless. Servers collected abandoned glasses. The string quartet quietly packed their instruments and left without a goodbye. Within an hour, the room that once brimmed with glamour was stripped to its bones. Only Daniel remained near the tall windows, hands in his pockets, watching the last guests disappear into the coastal dusk. The ocean beyond the glass churned under the rising wind, waves breaking against the rocks with a steady, rhythmic violence. He didn't feel triumphant. He didn't feel vindicated. He felt still. The storm was never his. Footsteps approached behind him, slow, uneven, fragile. He knew who it was without turning. "Daniel." Amelia's voice was raw, stripped of its usual polish. He faced her gently, but without moving closer. She stood a few steps away, gown wrinkled, makeup smudged at the corners of her eyes, her hair coming undone. Without the beauty of the event around her, she looked startlingly human real, in a way he had not seen her in years. "You shouldn't still be here," she whispered. "I know." "Why are you?" "Because you asked me to come." She closed her eyes briefly, as if the words cut deeper than intended. "I didn't think it would end like this." "Neither did I." Silence swelled between them, thick, weighted, trembling. Then Amelia drew a shaky breath. "Can we talk? Somewhere quiet?" Daniel hesitated, but then nodded once. "Lead the way." She brought him to a small reception room adjacent to the main hall, a space meant for bridal preparations, now abandoned and chaotic. Makeup brushes scattered across the counter, a forgotten glass of champagne half spilled, her bouquet, wilted and crushed where she had dropped it earlier. Amelia closed the door behind them. For a moment, she simply stood there, arms wrapped around herself as though she was freezing even though the room was warm. "Daniel," she began softly, "I'm sorry." He said nothing. She stepped closer. "For what I did to you, for the way I left, for how I treated you when you were doing your best." Daniel's eyes remained steady. "You didn't leave because of what I was. You left because of what you wanted." She winced. "I know. I chased a life I thought I needed. Lucas represented everything I believed I lacked. And now you know what it cost." Her voice tightened. "Yes?" The simple word hung in the air, heavy with regret. She looked at him with eyes full of questions she didn't know how to ask. "You changed," she said quietly. "More than I ever thought you could. I didn't expect that." "People change when they lose everything," Daniel replied. Not bitter, not triumphant, just true. She swallowed hard. "Seeing you today, it felt like seeing the man I always hoped you'd become. Someone confident, someone directed, someone who could give you the life you wanted." Daniel finished for her. Her lips parted, but she didn't deny it. He offered a quiet shake of his head. "Amelia, I didn't build this life to prove anything to you. I built it because I needed to survive myself." Tears pooled in her eyes, not dramatic tears, not performative, but small, trembling ones that clung to her eyelashes. "Daniel, I was wrong," she whispered, "about so many things, about you, about what mattered." He waited, not moving toward her, not rescuing her from the truth. "They kept telling me Lucas was the right choice. Stable, ambitious, successful." Her voice cracked. "I bought into it.
I thought that if I chose someone like him, I'd finally become someone worthy. Daniel's expression softened not with affection, but with quiet understanding. You were never unworthy, he said. You were just scared of being ordinary. A tear slid down her cheek. I know. And he promised you a story, Daniel continued, an easy one, a glamorous one. But I didn't realize it was built on lies. Daniel's silence told her he had suspected. She took one trembling step closer. Daniel, do you hate me? He exhaled, slowly. No, hating you would mean I'm still tied to what happened. Her lips shook. Then, could you ever forgive me? I forgave you a long time ago, he said softly. But forgiveness isn't a door back in. It's a door closed behind us. She flinched. Daniel continued, voice steady. We're not the same people we were, and I don't belong in the world you chose. It's not the world I want anymore, she whispered. He met her eyes. Amelia, you're hurting right now. Anyone looks like a lifeline when everything falls apart. Her breath trembled. That's not why I... Yes, Daniel said gently. It is. She didn't argue. For the first time, she didn't fight the truth. A long, breaking silence followed. Then Daniel slowly reached out, not to hold her, but to take her hand briefly, a gesture of closure, not connection. You'll be okay, he said. Those words shattered her more than any accusation. Her voice was hoarse. And you? Will you be okay? I already am. He released her hand. A small sob escaped her, quiet and devastating. When Daniel stepped toward the door, Amelia didn't stop him. She didn't reach for him. She simply watched the weight of every regret settling in her posture, in the way her shoulders slumped, in the way her breath caught, as if holding herself together required all her strength. Daniel opened the door. At the threshold, he paused and spoke without turning back. I hope you find the life you were looking for, Amelia. Truly. Then he walked out. The door clicked shut behind him, soft as a final heartbeat. Outside, the rain finally began to fall slow, cleansing drops that pattered against the roof of the pavilion. Daniel stepped into the cool air, inhaling deeply. The storm had broken, but not for him. For the first time in years, the past no longer had a claim on him. He walked toward the parking lot, toward the darkness, toward the quiet road that led away from the broken ceremony and everything it represented, not escaping, not running, simply moving forward, free.